All right, guys, so today we got a lot of stuff going on inside the shop. Steven just set the motor back in the Camaro. We're waiting on gears for the demo CUDA. Ranch tank. Little 7.3 Powerstroke H-pop action. Down here on this end, we have a full traction 4-link conversion kit being installed today with coilovers, active rate sway bar. They're bolt-on buckets. Bolt-on buckets for the 4-link arms, axle side, frame side. The bolt-on upper buckets for the coilovers. They're nice, powder coated. All this stuff's really nice and powder coated. We are a full traction suspension dealer and installer, so if y'all like what you see here and you're driving a late model Super Duty, anything 6.0, 7.3, you want to convert from leaf spring to 4-link, you want to go from radius arm or upgrade your radius arm suspension, check out what these guys have to offer and hit us up. So y'all are going to come along with us today. Logan, shop foreman, he's going to be out here installing this kit today, and yeah, this is going to be a badass kit. Johnny joints on the ends of the control arms. These are fully rebuildable, orbital, really nice. They don't make any noise and they're greasable. The cool thing about this kit, it is really labor intensive, and you've got to have some tools and some know-how. But the best part about it is that the majority of it just bolts on there. And we're going to take this stock grandpa looking unmolested, I think it's a 150,000 mile truck, right? Yeah, it's a 6-speed truck, even more rare. These things are getting hard to come by. But this is a really nice example of an early Super Duty. This is an 03, so the last year. This has got all the nicer of everything that you would have had as far as this run of 99 to 03, the very last year of the 7.3 Powerstroke before they went to a 6.0, and now we're gonna make this truck that much better. So y'all follow along, fixing to get this thing up in the air, start taking stuff apart before we start putting it back together. Here we go. Getting this 4-link conversion, the first item of business is to get everything out of the way. And
like
one
you,
of the
watch out.
Hey, once you get yourself out of the way and your brother's too tough, then you can get started. So Logan got the front axle pulled out of this thing, and this is a basic setup: leaf springs and U-bolts. You got a drive shaft, a track bar. Both leaf springs come off of those pads. You knock the steering loose, take the brake lines and stuff off, and this thing comes out. And this bad boy is our 4-link bucket that is actually going to saddle onto this. It's got a locating pin on the bottom side. This is roughly how that sits. And then the U-bolts actually attach from the bottom up through here. You tighten this up, and this is going to allow you a spot to attach an upper and lower control arm and a shock tab, along with stuff over here on the front side for the active rate sway rod.
This is coilover, right?
Yeah, coilover. My bad. I know what I'm talking about.
We don't have shocks on this no more.
Yes.
What kind of?
These old shocks are going to come off. This mount's going to get removed, and that's going to get replaced with this bucket, one on each side, and that's where the coilovers are going to mount, and that's actually what's going to suspend the front of the truck. Now that we've got the leaf springs pulled out of this thing, we're going from this old antiquated suspension to a much better setup on the front. This coil right here actually suspends the vehicle. That's what this thing is for. You can get different ratings of spring depending on the weight of the vehicle. These are designed for the weight of a 7.3 Powerstroke on the front of this to keep this at a certain determined height. And then the shock is actually on the inside, and the shock itself has valving in it that is either tuned by Bilstein, tuned by the builder. You can do all kinds of adjustments when you have coilovers to change dramatically the way that this thing absorbs bumps or doesn't absorb bumps, depending on what you're going to do. These are probably set at a moderate setting to give you a good on-road feel and to be able to give you a whole lot better off-road suspension basically dynamic than what you had with a leaf spring. By converting to a 4-link with a track bar, you take all of the twist and deflection out that you get with bushings on leaf springs. So this eye of the spring and the backside at the hanger, because they've got rubber isolators in here, when you make a left or a right hand turn, these actually twist on the inside of this and deflect. When you have a 4-link setup with a track bar, the track bar eliminates any left or right movement whatsoever, and the 4-link bars eliminate any forward and back movement. So you end up with something that's much more rigid, and it transfers all of that energy directly to the coilover, and you get a hell of a lot stouter and better response to the steering wheel and feel overall in the truck by having something where you have less deflectable parts. You concentrate that energy to where you want it, which is into the coilover, and it gives you a lot better on and off-road feel. Representing that Schaefer's swag here today. If you don't know what Schaefer's oil is, you need to do a little bit of reading. They are legit, and we are moving over to a 100% Schaefer's shop. So if y'all got questions about any of that, Google Schaefer's, check them out. Been around a couple 100 years. Hands down, best oil you can get. All right, so back to the project here at hand. We left off, had the front diff out, and we were pulling stuff off. Well, now we're going back together, and we have the front upper buckets. This is the piece that is actually going to hold the front coilover. This is the top mount, and this is tying into the frame in several locations because this is going to support the entire weight of the front of the truck. We've got this side on and this side on. Looking good. These things look cool too. This track bar mount replaces the factory setup with a new super stout unit that also has an additional bar that runs across here to help and kind of reinforce this piece. So this bar runs from the center of the engine cradle over to the top side with a nice fat fastener. You get a drop pitman arm so you can correct your steering geometry, because this is a 4.5-inch lift. They offer it in a 4.5, a 6, and an 8. This is the 4.5-inch variant, so probably perfect for a 35 to 37-inch tire. Gonna be dope. This thing stiffens this thing up because the track bar actually keeps the axle from moving left and right. So you've got this super stout mount to keep that nice and rigid, and just overall feel even stiffer than just a bolt-on mount. Right now, we're basically to the point where we're going to start getting ready to assemble the first part of the 4-link, which is the buckets that are going to mount to the frame on this side and this side. That's these guys right here and here. This is the front receiving bucket that is going to go on the axle. We kind of showed you that yesterday. They set down over the top of this. They use the center locating pin that the leaf spring did to get those in the right orientation, and then they have U-bolts that bolt that in place, so no welding required on the front side. You do have to do a little bit of trimming on some of the stuff that's on the front axle. Instructions are a little bit vague on that, but if you've put a lift kit on a truck or fabricated anything, it's not going to take you but a couple of minutes to figure out how this goes. It really only works one way. These are our sway rod mounts. These were drilled and tapped, one on either side, and that's what's going to mount our active rate sway bar right there. This is a really cool piece. If you haven't seen these before, your typical sway bar looks like this on most vehicles. It's just one piece of formed solid bar. It's like spring steel, I'm going to assume. I'm not an engineer of those, so I don't know without a doubt, but this piece is designed to keep the truck flat whenever you do cornering. So if this side of the truck tries to go up, it pulls on that side of the bar to keep it from twisting and the truck rolling. Great for daily driver on street use, but when you get into off-road, this can seriously limit wheel travel. That is where you get into something like this. So this has a different response than this does. Typically these right here allow for a little bit more sway. You've got to kind of tilt a little bit more before it really starts to go to work, but these work really well. You don't have to pull the sway bar end link off to get decent articulation. There's always going to be more wheel travel when taking the sway bar end link off. It is a limiting factor, but this is going to allow you to drive a suspension setup that performs really well off-road and still use it on-road for a daily driver. The other part that's really cool is the fact that these are all splined, so that you can index these into different locations depending on, you know, what you need to do as far as clearance height or for tires rubbing or whatever. Anything that fits inside the dimension under the front wheel well of this, you can actually index that. There's a specific point that gives you full travel and it doesn't contact anything, but it does give you some adjustability and, you know, a couple of degree increments to get that thing dialed in. And it just looks really clean. It looks really cool. When this is all set up and done, you'll be able to see what that looks like and see that not only does this perform a lot better than stock, but it definitely looks really kick-ass. Okay guys, we've been busy and it's hotter than hell, so I missed a little bit of filming on the front suspension, so y'all don't be too mad, but I'm gonna explain to you what happened. So we left off needing to put these rear buckets on back here, and now you can see them installed. This is what this looks like. 4 fasteners from the front, or from the side rather, 3 come in from the bottom side. You got these 2 big 3/4 through bolts at the front and at the back for the control arms. These are Johnny joints. I think we may have talked about these a little earlier, but these are fully rebuildable, so that the actual cast part you never replace. There's an orbital piece on the inside, and you can actually pull the snap ring out, pull the guts out of that, put a new one in there, so if ever they fatigue, you can just replace that without having to replace the entire joint on the end of the control arm. You can see the coilovers mounted up in here, looking really clean. We did have to do some machine work. Logan had to go over to the mill and cut these down to 1.25 inches. Apparently Bilstein made their eyelets at 1.5 inches width for 20 years, and in the past few months, maybe this last year, they made them 1.25 inches for that many years, and then just recently they went to 1.5 inches. So we had to mill 1/8 of an inch off either side of that to get to sit down into the bucket here. Other than that, this was really pretty straightforward. You can see where the sway bar mounted up and how this thing looks, and I mean, that thing is legit. Plenty of clearance because these are flat bars, no round ugly business going on there, just something that looks really presentable. We also found this guy in the bed of the truck, and we don't know who this guy is. He eats a lot and drinks a lot. He breathes out of the mouth heavy. Yeah, don't pay too much attention to him and he won't bite you. We're trying to make sure he's got up-to-date rabies shots and stuff, and maybe we'll just feed him. He doesn't? He doesn't. It speaks. Yeah, it tucks. Yeah. There you go, boys and girls. The front end of this thing's done. We're gonna throw the blocks on the back, throw the basically factory wheels and tires back on it, which is the only thing this dude has for now, so it's gonna look like he needs to do leg day until he gets a set of wheels and tires put on this bad boy. All right, you guys, it's another day of 139, and I think Logan is finished up on this Powerstroke.
Almost. Rear shocks.
Close?
Rear shocks.
Rear shocks. So we were dealing with a couple of, well, not a couple 1/8 of an inch. We had 3/8 of an inch basically ass low on the truck whenever we got everything assembled with the block that came with the kit. Actually, let me back up. The U-bolts that came with the kit and the block did not fit. The U-bolts were not long enough. And we did some math and we thought, well, the truck's gonna sit basically level once it settles if we use this block and the other block, and then it still fits with the overloads on it and the U-bolts are the right length. And so we did that, and it sat, how low did it sit in the back?
1 inch low after driving.
1 inch low. So I think it was like right at 3/8 when we set it on the ground. And then you drive a little bit and that settles. And the front and the back are always gonna settle on any suspension at least a little bit. And that's kind of when you want to take your measurements. And so we checked a couple different things. We checked the body line, we checked to the wheel arch. The wheel arch is a lot of the time what your eye draws to whenever you do a lift kit on a truck. There are some that are more exaggerated between the front and the rear wheel arch line. A lot of times the front fender is actually higher than the back, and so you end up with a look that looks like it's squatting and it's not. But at the end of the day, a lot of it matters what it looks like, kind of like everything. What does it look like? And then what does the actual math say, so that you can see how far you came up, what kind of wheel travel you have, and then make sense of it to yourself It makes a lot more sense if you're like, well, it's, you know, 45 and a half and it's 45 and a half. Okay, that must be level. If it looks level and it measures level, it's level. You know, but at the end of the day, we wanted this truck because it is a 1-ton. It's got a couple 100 pounds worth of toolboxes and a fuel tank with a transfer pump, a nice headache rack, a nice rear bumper. So he's got, I don't know, probably pushing 1,000 pounds worth of accessories set on the back of it. Even though this is towards the front of the bed, you're still going to get some settling. And so anyway, we wanted the ass end of the truck to be maybe just a little bit high, especially because it's a long bed. These are easier to get away with the ass end being a little bit high and it's still looking good, because for the most part, most people agree that a leveled truck looks the best when it's cruising down the road. The problem is that if you use the truck as a truck and it sits level, then anytime you put a load in it, you're always ass low. And if you're gonna just cruise around and drive, you know, to and from the store or on the highway all the time, you're never really gonna load the truck. Level is good. But with this one, we wanted to be a little bit high in the back if humanly possible. So we just got done setting the rear blocks in there, which are the factory block, which is a tall 4.5 inch block, I believe, and then another 4.5 inch block to bring it up to sit correct with the front. So now we're gonna torque the U-bolts. Those go up to 110 foot-pounds. Gonna throw the rear shocks back on the ass end of this truck. I've said ass like 20 times. And then we're gonna go drive it and hit some bumps and let it settle. We'll come back, pull a tape on the wheel arch, give you a look at what this thing looks like out in the parking lot sitting on level ground, and you can make your own opinion about it. But we think we've got it nailed this time. And I'll tell you what, the thing rides like a champion. This is also a really dope truck. It's a ZF6 truck. Already locked the keys up and took it inside, but you can see 6-speed truck, super clean. And I know that this kid, I think his dad bought this truck, and there's a young kid who's gonna end up driving it. And I know he was super excited. They came by and looked at the truck earlier, and I'd be excited too. Really nice truck. So we'll wait to hear back from them on what their thoughts are on how this thing rides, but I'll tell you right now, it rides like a caddy. So anyway, just a quick filler video, kind of show y'all one of the many things that we do here at the shop. All right, later.